In 2006, the world economy was a picture of perfect stability. Housing prices had never been higher. Banks were posting record profits. The system, we were told, was infallible. Yet, in the quiet corners of the market, analysts, economists, and investors were sounding an alarm. They pointed to complex financial instruments, derivatives built on failing mortgages, and warned that the entire structure was hollow. They warned of a collapse. They were dismissed as pessimists, as alarmists, as people who simply didn't understand the new paradigm. When the crash came in 2008, it wasn't just a failure of finance. It was a failure of listening. We are surrounded by data. We hire the brightest minds to analyze it. We build dashboards and run forecasts, yet critical warnings are ignored. Disasters unfold in slow motion, precisely as predicted. Innovative ideas are presented by our own teams only to be dismissed and later perfected by our competitors. Why? Why, in an age of unprecedented information, do we remain so profoundly deaf? The answer isn't in a boardroom. It's not in a spreadsheet. The answer is 2,000 years old, buried in the ruins of a burning city. It lies in the story of the most tragic figure in all of Greek mythology. This is not a story about a divine curse. This is a story about a psychological complex that topples empires and bankrupts industries to this very day. Welcome to Hindsight Lore. Today, we are not just retelling a myth. We are decoding the Cassandra Complex and analyzing why modern leaders still ignore critical warnings. To understand the complex, we must first understand the woman, Cassandra, Princess of Troy, daughter of King Priam. She was, by all accounts, brilliant, pious, and desired by a god. The myth begins with Apollo, the god of the sun, of music, and of prophecy. He saw Cassandra and was consumed by desire. He offered her a bargain, her love, in exchange for the greatest gift a god could bestow, the ability to see the future. Cassandra, devout and ambitious, agreed. Apollo touched her lips, and the universe fractured. She saw it all, the infinite, branching paths of what was and what will be. But Cassandra was mortal, and mortals have a strength that gods despise, the strength to change their minds. After receiving the gift, she refused the god. Apollo, humiliated, could not revoke his divine gift. The future would remain clear to her. So he added a curse, a subtle, insidious modification. He spat in her mouth, ensuring that while she would always see the truth, no one would ever believe her. This is where the story, as we often hear it, stops. It becomes a simple fable about a spiteful god and a doomed woman. But at Hindsight Lore, we are interested in the mechanism of the failure. The curse is the lazy explanation. The real question is, why was it so effective? Cassandra's warnings were not vague. They were specific, actionable, and vital. First, she warned her brother Paris not to sail to Sparta. She knew it would bring ruin. He ignored her, sailed, and returned with Helen, the face that launched 1,000 ships. The war began. Second, during the 10-year siege, she repeatedly warned the Trojan Council. She described the wooden horse with perfect clarity. She explained that it was a trick, that it was filled with armed men. And how did the leaders of Troy, the grizzled veterans, the wise king, the brilliant strategists, respond to this critical intelligence? They called her mad. They labeled her hysterical. They had her dragged from the temple, imprisoned in a citadel, and silenced. They chose to believe the comforting lie of a captured spy, Sinon, who told them the horse was a gift and offering to Athena. Finally, after Troy fell, after the city was sacked, just as she had predicted, Cassandra was taken as a prize by the Greek king Agamemnon. As they arrived at his palace in Mycenae, she had one final vision. She saw her own death and his. She saw the queen, Clytemnestra, waiting inside with an axe, ready to murder them both in a bath. She screamed her warning. Agamemnon, weary of her madness, ignored her. He walked inside. He was murdered, she was murdered. Her track record was 100%, her data was perfect, and her failure rate was absolute. Why? The curse is a convenient narrative. It absolves the leaders of Troy of all responsibility. But the truth is far more uncomfortable. The curse only worked because it amplified the three most powerful flaws of human psychology, flaws that are hardwired into every human brain and amplified in every corporate hierarchy. The first is confirmation bias. The Trojans had just survived a 10-year war. They saw the Greek ships sailing away. They were desperate for the war to be over. They needed to be victorious. A giant wooden horse appearing on the beach. It fit their desired narrative. It was a trophy, a symbol of their endurance. Cassandra's warning that the war was not over, that the threat was now inside the gates, was a narrative they could not accept. It contradicted the reality they had already decided upon. We don't listen to data that challenges our core beliefs. We listen to data that confirms them. The second flaw is cognitive dissonance. This is the profound mental discomfort we feel when holding two conflicting beliefs at the same time. Belief 1, we are the wise, powerful leaders of an invincible city. Belief 2, we are about to be destroyed by a cheap wooden trick. These two beliefs cannot coexist. To accept Cassandra's warning would mean accepting that their entire 10-year strategy was a failure, that their sacrifices were in vain, that they were fools. It was mentally, psychologically easier to believe that she was insane than to believe that they were wrong. And this leads to the third and most lethal flaw: shoot the messenger. Because Cassandra's truth was so painful, Cassandra herself became the problem. She wasn't seen as a strategic asset. She was seen as a source of anxiety, a disruptive force, a voice of pessimism in a culture of manufactured optimism. The leaders of Troy didn't just ignore her. They actively silenced her. They imprisoned her. They invalidated her. Because it was the only way to protect their own fragile consensus. They attacked the credibility of the person to avoid confronting the credibility of the data. Confirmation bias, cognitive dissonance, shooting the messenger. This isn't a divine curse. It is a blueprint for organizational failure. So, if the curse is just a predictable pattern of human psychology, where is our modern Troy? Where are our modern Cassandras? You don't have to look far. They aren't in ancient palaces. They are in cubicles. They are in junior level meetings. And in the late 1990s, one of them showed up at the headquarters of Blockbuster Video. In the 1990s, Blockbuster was not just a company. It was an empire. It was Troy, with nearly 9,000 stores. It was a cultural ritual. The blue and yellow ticket, the Be Kind Rewind sticker, the smell of popcorn and plastic. Their business model was a fortress. They made over $800 million a year, primarily from one brilliant, punitive strategy: late fees. Their power seemed absolute, their walls impenetrable. In the year 2000, a small, struggling startup founder named Reed Hastings flew to Dallas, to the Blockbuster headquarters. He had an idea. His company, Netflix, was losing money. His model was niche, sending DVDs through the mail. No late fees, a simple subscription. Hastings entered the Trojan Council, the boardroom of Blockbuster CEO John Antioco, and he made his prophecy. He told them that his model, the subscription model, was the future. He warned them that the internet was coming, that physical stores and late fees were a dying business. He offered them a gift, not a horse, but an alliance. He proposed that Netflix would run Blockbuster's online brand, that they would merge, combining Blockbuster's scale with Netflix's innovation. The price for this future? $50 million. The Blockbuster executives, in their wisdom, laughed him out of the room. The story is now legend. It is taught in every business school as a case of disruption. But Hindsight lore is not a business school. We are a school of psychology and strategy. This wasn't disruption, this was a Cassandra event. Let's analyze this not as a business failure, but as a psychological tragedy. Let's apply the exact three flaws that doomed Troy. First, confirmation bias. What was Blockbuster's core profitable belief? People like going to the store. Our physical presence is our strength. More importantly, their entire financial model was built on the inefficiency of the customer. Late fees. They profited from a bad customer experience. Reed Hastings, their Cassandra, presented a warning that contradicted this reality. He said, "The future is convenience. No late fees, no stores." To Blockbuster's leaders, this was absurd. It was like telling the Trojans the horse wasn't a gift. It didn't fit the narrative. All their data, all their quarterly reports showed their stores were profitable. Hastings was an outlier, a rounding error. They listened only to the data that confirmed what they already believed. Second, cognitive dissonance. Belief 1. We are a multi-billion-dollar empire, the smartest guys in the room. Belief 2. This small-time founder is telling us our entire empire is worthless. The dissonance was too great to believe Reed Hastings. John Antioco would have to accept that his 9,000 stores were not assets. They were liabilities. That his $800 million revenue stream from late fees was not a strength. It was a vulnerability. It was psychologically impossible. It was easier to believe that Hastings was a fool than to believe that their entire careers had been built on a foundation of sand. So they did what all doomed leaders do. They activated the third flaw: shoot the messenger. They didn't just decline the offer, they laughed. They dismissed Hastings as niche. They belittled his idea. Why? Because his message was an insult. It threatened their identity. They didn't hear a business proposal. They heard an accusation. They attacked the credibility of the messenger, a small, failing startup, to avoid confronting the terrifying credibility of his message. The rest is history. Blockbuster, in its arrogance, even tried to launch its own Netflix killer service, but it was half-hearted. Their confirmation bias ran too deep. They couldn't bring themselves to stop prioritizing their physical stores. They couldn't kill the late fee cash cow. They couldn't escape their own successful past. In 2010, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy. The empire was dust. Troy had fallen, not because of a wooden horse, but because the men in charge, the wise leaders, chose to believe their own comforting lies rather than the one inconvenient, terrifying truth. Cassandra, Reed Hastings, had been right all along. But being right is not the same as being heard. We have established the pattern. Troy, Blockbuster, the 2008 crash. The complex is clear. The stakes are clear. It is not a myth. It is a recurring, predictable, and lethal loop of human behavior. So, how do we break it? If the Cassandra Complex is a systemic failure of listening, then the solution must be a systemic antidote. We must build an organization, a mindset that is anti-Cassandra. An organization that is designed to listen. The tragedy of Troy was a choice. The tragedy of Blockbuster was a choice. They chose the comfort of the status quo over the discomfort of the truth. To build an organization that listens, we cannot rely on heroic leaders or open-door policies. Those are passive. We must build active, institutional strategies designed to fight our own worst instincts. The antidote comes in 3 parts. Strategy 1, institutionalize dissent. The primary failure of King Priam's council was unanimous, arrogant agreement. The primary failure of Blockbuster's board was the same. The antidote is to force disagreement, to make dissent a process, not a rebellion. In military and intelligence circles, this is called red teaming. A red team is a group of people within your own organization whose only job is to destroy your plan. Their job is to be Cassandra. Their job is to think like the enemy, to find every flaw, to argue against the consensus. If Blockbuster had a formal red team, their job would have been to present the case for why Netflix would win. Their job would be to say, our stores are a weakness. Late fees create resentment. The internet is the Trojan horse, and it is already inside the gates. A mature leader does not just tolerate dissent, they institutionalize it. Amazon, for example, uses a principle called disagree and commit. It gives junior members a formal path to disagree with senior leaders. They can write a formal paper outlining their dissent. The leader must read it. Even if the leader still overrules them, the dissent is on the record. The Cassandra has been heard. This process fights confirmation bias by forcing the leadership to engage with opposing data. Strategy 2. Decode the how, listen for the what. Let's be honest, Cassandras are often difficult. Their prophecies don't come in a polite email or a well-structured PowerPoint. They come in a panic. They sound hysterical, alarmist, negative, or not a team player. The Trojans dismissed Cassandra because she was screaming in the temple. She was disruptive. The modern leader must be trained to separate the signal from the noise, the data from the delivery. When a junior analyst seems panicked about a flaw in the code, when a salesperson is angry about customer feedback, a bad leader will focus on their tone. Calm down, be more professional. A wise leader, an anti-Cassandra leader, will ignore the tone entirely. They will ask one question: what do you see that I do not? They will listen past the how, the panic, the anger, to get to the what, the critical warning. This is how you disarm the shoot the messenger instinct. You protect the messenger to get to the message. Strategy 3. Practice active leadership humility. This is the most difficult step because it is the antidote to the divine flaw that started the entire myth: hubris. Apollo, in his arrogance, cursed Cassandra. King Priam, in his arrogance, doomed Troy. John Antiocho, in his arrogance, bankrupted Blockbuster. Hubris is the belief that I know. Humility is the belief that I might be wrong. The open door policy is a myth of hubris. It puts the burden on the Cassandra to be brave enough to walk through the door. Active humility is different. It is the leader walking out of their own office, walking down to the factory floor, to the call center, to the junior developers, and asking them, what are we getting wrong? What am I missing? What is the wooden horses that you see? This is the leadership of a CEO who doesn't just ask, do we have any questions, at the end of a meeting. This is the leader who starts the meeting by saying, here's my plan. Now, I need you to tell me why it's wrong. This humility is the ultimate antidote. It fights confirmation bias, it resolves cognitive dissonance, and it welcomes the messenger. It is the final, essential piece of an organization that cannot be cursed. The Cassandra Complex is not a myth, it is a mirror. It reflects the most dangerous human tendency, the desire to protect our own sense of certainty. The tragedy of Cassandra is not that she was cursed by a god. The tragedy is that she was silenced by men who were too arrogant, too comfortable, and too afraid to listen. Troy fell because its leaders built walls around their city, but not around their own egos. Blockbuster collapsed because its executives value the profits of the past more than the warnings of the future. In our modern world, an age of exponential change, of artificial intelligence, of cultural and climatic shifts, the speed of disruption is faster than it has ever been. The Trojan horses are no longer wooden. They are lines of code. They are new business models. They are inconvenient scientific data. They are cultural shifts we choose to ignore. And the Cassandras are all around us. They are in our companies, our governments, our communities. They are the voices telling us what we need to hear, not what we want to hear. This then is the final lesson of hindsight lore. The ultimate competitive advantage, the final mark of true leadership, is not the power of your vision. It is the humility of your hearing. So look around your office, look at your team, look at your own life. Your Cassandra is there. When they speak, will you listen? Or will you, like Priam, open the gates?